Okay, this is part three of chapter 13 or 12, depending on what book you have. Social psychology, go by the title. Um, we talked about three of the seven different social phenomenons. I'm going to talk about four more. The next one is social facilitation. Hopefully, you have your word list. Social facilitation is the idea that the presence of another individual makes you work harder, do better. For instance, in a study, and I don't know why anybody would study this, but they found out roaches run faster when there's other roaches around. Um, Dogs, cats will eat faster if other dogs and cats are around. Obviously, that makes sense. But we're talking about self-facilitation would be, um, for instance, if you're running the track and somebody else comes on the track, you tend to run better or harder. It's just like working out. If you're working out, lifting weights, and somebody comes in, looks at you, you start lifting stronger. So social facilitation is, for instance, like fans at a game. You athletes love to have fans in the game because they're watching you, and so you tend to do better with fans. Social facilitation is like, for instance, you're walking on the beach and you're kind of slumped over like that, and somebody comes up the other way. You're going to show your best side. That's a social facilitation. Um, you ever drive down the highway and you're past you're going to speed limit 70, and the person's going like 68, and you start to pass them, and you notice they try to pass and they speed up. Now you know why. It's a social facilitation. The presence of somebody else makes you work harder, stronger. Now, evaluation apprehension is just like social facilitation, but one thing added. Evaluation apprehension is you think you're being judged, therefore you work better or harder. So if you're riding free ride on Friday around the barn at the arena, and then you see that your instructor is on the rail, you're going to start riding better. Or if you're driving, you look behind you and there's a police car, you're going to drive safer. Um, so uh, the evaluation apprehension is the belief that you're being judged, which is different. Just self-interpretation just had somebody else there. Social evaluation apprehension is you're being judged. So I know nobody would do this, and probably I'll get in trouble with this example of saying you're dancing on tables and you're having a good time, but then people are holding up numbers, you're going to dance harder. So the fact is that if you think you're being evaluated, then you tend to, and this is another thing that fans like at games, because they're going, I can do better than that and stuff, and so they're booing you or something like that. That's a part of that evaluation apprehension. So the two are very close on the test. You got to make sure that that extra component, if it doesn't have judging, then it's social facilitation. If it has judging, it's evaluation apprehension. It's just like I've noticed people when they're taking inventories in class, some of the times, oh, I'm sick of these inventories. And I walk by and all of a sudden you start running harder because you think you're being judged. That would be evaluation apprehension. The fourth, the third one today, or the sixth one, is social loafing, one of my favorite terms in psychology. And that is when you have a group, there's always somebody not doing their fair share. There's social loafing. So I know all of you worked on committees where you've had people do, work on projects together, group projects together. And there's always somebody slacking off. They're not doing their fair share because they know the rest of you are so concerned that you'll take care of it. You ever watch people push a car out of a ditch? Two or three people are pushing really hard, and one person's not really putting a lot of effort into it. I know this is a sad example you see today, but when you see at funerals with carrying a coffin, it's never level because one person is not carrying the weight. So social loafing is that, especially if you have diffusion of responsibility, which they can't figure out who's doing what, that if you have more than one person doing an activity, probably usually better three or more, one person is not going to do the same work as the other people. And I know you've all had that experience. Social cognition is the last, and we have a couple things under social cognition. And one of them is attribution theory. And attribution theory is when you're missing particular information about somebody, you add to that. You fill in the gaps by attributing to them some characteristic you believe. For instance, if you get cut off by somebody, then they're a terrible driver or they're stupid. If you look at somebody and their dress wear, you go, oh, they're crazy. So attribution theory is attributing, in positive or negative, a trait to someone when you don't know very much about them. You just fill in the gaps. You attribute some characteristic to them. So if you had, a, a sweet mixed drink and a beer in a bottle, and there was a cowboy there, you would assume he wants the beer. That's attributing. You don't know what he or she wants, but you attribute that to them. Stereotyping is another part of social cognition, and stereotyping is attribution theory, but you are applying a characteristic of an individual because of a group. All Asians with glasses are smart. So, okay, that is stereotyping. So you're attributing, because of a group, a certain characteristic. Where attribution theory is usually one person, stereotyping is, again, a positive or negative, which means you can attribute good qualities, like, all GGG, all gamma, gamma, gamma girls are beautiful. So that type of thing can be either positive or negative. Part of the stereotyping is that you're attributing something, again, because of a group. Now, there's two things that stereotyping produces. One is prejudice, and prejudice is an attitude, and discrimination is acting on the prejudice. So if I don't like Martians, that is a prejudice. But if I won't let Martians live in my house, my apartment complex, that would be discrimination. So prejudice is an attitude, and discrimination is how you act on that attitude. Part of stereotyping, again, would be positive or negative. Like, oh, University of Florida students are brilliant, which is probably true. But there's two things that you can do to combat stereotyping. One is to individualize the group members, which means, for instance, my mother, probably one of the least prejudiced people in the world, because my mother hated everybody equally. And when I was growing up, the African Americans this, and the French were this, and the Cubans were this, and I got all this negativity. And but we used to have these little dinner. People, my mother would invite over for dinner. It was funny because my mother couldn't cook. But anyway, and one people were the Williams, and they were African Americans. And after they left, I said to my mom, Mom, you don't like African Americans? And she goes, well, the Williams aren't black. I said to her, what do you, they don't have a mirror in their family? I mean, at their house. And we had Marquez's, which were Ed Marquez, who unfortunately one of my roommates passed away just recently. He was Cuban. His family came over. My mother didn't like Cubans at all. But then again, individualize group members. The second thing you can do is to maximize, put them in a joint venture. I once was watching a movie about I forget the name of the movie. It was a World War II movie about the Black Battalion, and we'd send into suicide missions. And I asked my father, I said, would it matter what color skin a person would have if you were in a foxhole when he was in World War II? And he looked at me and said, what uniform are they wearing? So the fact is that when you maximize the group effort, so if you have different people working on the same thing, we tend to less stereotype them. For instance, there's a great study, a Boy Scout study, and I forget the name of the groups. I think it was the beavers, the chipmunks, the squirrels, and the wolves. And they asked the beavers to rate the other three, compared themselves, and of course, all the other three they weren't very good. Then the beavers and the squirrels built something together, and then afterwards they rated the squirrels very high. And then all four groups worked together, and then the beavers rated the other three groups very high. Because they worked on a joint venture, you tend to less stereotype. Okay, and the final thing, well, we'll stop here and I'll pick up the final social cognition. And if you have any questions on any of this stuff, feel free to email me or whatever. And again, all this stuff is on YouTube. There are all kinds of examples. If you just click on stereotype and then I'll explain that stuff. All right, take care, stay safe.